The unthinkable has just happened right on America's northern doorstep. Canada has officially blocked United States access to the Arctic, permanently severing the vital arteries of the Northwest Passage. This is not a temporary diplomatic spat or a routine border dispute over fishing rights. This is a permanent, heavily militarized closure that has just locked the United States out of an estimated $4 trillion in untapped resources. The mainstream media is barely whispering about this, framing it as a minor environmental policy update. But the truth they are hiding is far more terrifying for the global balance of power. This single, unprecedented maneuver completely neutralizes America's strategic advantage in the Northern Hemisphere. It effectively hands the keys of the future to foreign adversaries who have been waiting decades for this exact moment. We are talking about a total geopolitical blackout that compromises billions of barrels of oil and limitless natural gas. It cuts off the critical rare earth minerals required for every single piece of modern technology. The data is clear and the consequences are immediate. This changes everything you thought you knew about the unbreakable alliance between the United States and Canada. You are watching the collapse of North American unity in real time. To understand why Ottawa just slammed the door on Washington, we have to look far beyond the ice caps of the high north. This closure is intimately connected to massive global shifts that are happening right beneath our noses. First, we must examine the historical context that has been boiling under the surface since the Cold War. In 1969, the American oil tanker SS Manhattan smashed its way through the Northwest Passage without asking Canada's permission. In 1985, the U.S. Coast Guard icebreaker Polar Sea did the exact same thing, infuriating the Canadian government. For decades, the United States argued under international law that these waters were an international strait, open to all navigational traffic. Canada has always claimed them as historic internal waters, but they simply never had the geopolitical leverage to enforce it, until today. What changed is the aggressive, rapid expansion of the BRICS economic bloc. For years, the United States has relied on the absolute dominance of the petrodollar to control global energy markets. But with major energy producers aligning with Beijing and Moscow, the petrodollar is facing an existential threat. Canada has been quietly observing this shift from the sidelines. Ottawa realizes that tying its entire economic future exclusively to a declining American financial empire is a fatal miscalculation. By claiming total, unyielding sovereignty over the Northwest Passage, Canada is transforming itself into an independent geopolitical fortress. They are positioning themselves to negotiate directly with massive Asian markets, bypassing American oversight entirely. The second hidden connection lies in the silent, ruthless war for rare earth minerals. China currently controls over 80% of the global processing capacity for these crucial elements. These are the specific minerals powering your smartphone, your electric vehicle, and the Pentagon's advanced missile guidance systems. Elements like neodymium, dysprosium, and terbium are the actual currencies of the 21st century. The Arctic Circle represents the absolute last massive, untapped reserve of these minerals on the planet. Geological surveys indicate that the Canadian Shield extending into the Arctic holds trillions of dollars worth of these deposits. By blocking U.S. access, Canada is artificially restricting the supply of North American rare earths. This creates a massive bottleneck that forces American tech companies and defense contractors into a state of absolute panic. It is no coincidence that this blockade happens precisely when the U.S. was preparing a massive government-subsidized push to extract Arctic resources. Washington was about to launch a multi-billion-dollar initiative to break China's monopoly. Canada just derailed that entire strategy with a single stroke of a pen. The third piece of this intricate puzzle is the rapidly accelerating shift in global shipping logistics. As the polar ice recedes at unprecedented rates, the Northwest Passage is transitioning from a frozen wasteland into the most valuable maritime highway on Earth. Shipping routes from Asia to Europe are cut by up to 40% when utilizing the Arctic instead of the Panama or Suez canals. We are looking at an entirely new artery of global trade. Whoever controls the toll booth to this new highway controls the future of the global economy. With America violently distracted by proxy conflicts in Eastern Europe and escalating tensions in the Middle East, Ottawa found the perfect window. They have essentially staged a bloodless coup over global maritime logistics. These events are not isolated coincidences. They are a synchronized reshaping of the world order. The loss of $4 trillion in resources is just the opening salvo in a much larger, invisible economic war. The global supply chain is being fundamentally rewired, and America has just been cut out of the circuit. This is not just a polite disagreement between two neighboring governments over maritime borders. This is a high-stakes strategic battle involving the most powerful military, economic, and intelligence forces on the globe. At the very center of this storm is the Canadian government, which has completely abandoned its traditional role as America's compliant junior partner. Ottawa has realized that true sovereignty in the 21st century requires hard power and total control over critical choke points. They are leveraging the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, known as UNCLOS, to legally fortify their northern borders. Because the United States has stubbornly refused to ever ratify UNCLOS, Washington has no legal standing to fight this in international courts. Canada has trapped America in a legal paradox of its own making. On the other side, the Pentagon is in a state of absolute, unmitigated panic. For the United States military, specifically NORTHCOM and the architects of Homeland Defense, the Arctic is the ultimate high ground. It is the absolute shortest flight path for intercontinental ballistic missiles traveling between hostile nations and North American cities. Losing unrestricted naval and aerial access to this region creates a massive, terrifying blind spot in the NORAD defense grid. The U.S. Navy relies heavily on freedom of navigation operations to project global hegemony. Being completely shut out by a NATO ally is a humiliating strategic defeat that shatters the illusion of American naval supremacy. Then we have the European Union, watching nervously from the sidelines as their shipping strategies collapse. The EU desperately needs alternative, secure trade routes and raw materials that do not rely on unstable regions. They were banking entirely on the United States to act as the enforcer, keeping the Arctic open for Western exploitation. Now, bureaucrats in Brussels are scrambling to figure out how to negotiate directly with Canada. They know they will be forced to pay exorbitant transit fees and environmental taxes just to move cargo. But the most dangerous players in this scenario are the ones operating quietly in the shadows: Russia and China. Russia already possesses the world's largest, most advanced fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers. Through Project 22220, Moscow has spent the last decade aggressively militarizing its own Arctic coastline, building deep-water ports and radar stations. With the U.S. suddenly locked out of the Canadian Arctic, Russia now holds uncontested, overwhelming naval supremacy in the frozen north. China, meanwhile, declared itself a near-Arctic state in 2018, a move that Western analysts foolishly laughed off at the time. Beijing has been quietly executing its Polar Silk Road initiative, investing massive capital into Greenland and northern infrastructure. With America entirely out of the picture, China is stepping in with unlimited infrastructure loans. They are effectively buying influence and access to the newly restricted passage through Canadian proxy corporations. This is a masterclass in the classic divide and conquer strategy. The United States has fallen right into the trap, completely blind to the alliances forming against it. The power dynamics of the Northern Hemisphere have violently shifted overnight. Washington has been left completely isolated, stranded on its own continent, while the rest of the world carves up the future. If you think this geopolitical maneuvering thousands of miles away won't affect your daily life, you are dangerously mistaken. This blockade is going to hit your wallet with the devastating force of a freight train. Let's break down the exact unforgiving math of this economic disaster. The $4 trillion in lost resources isn't just abstract government money printed on a screen. It is the fundamental foundation of future energy markets, technological manufacturing, and global logistics. We can calculate the immediate economic drain on the American economy using a terrifyingly simple formula. Context: total economic drain. Context: stranded assets, plus some I1 and text on logistics delay, in times, and text, inflationary multiplier. When the United States loses access to billions of barrels of stable, domestic adjacent oil, the global energy market instantly tightens. Speculators are already pricing in the loss of future Arctic reserves. Gasoline prices are going to skyrocket as American refineries are forced to source heavy crude from volatile, hostile overseas markets. You are going to see a permanent, unavoidable spike at the pump. This will bleed hundreds of dollars from your personal budget every single month. But the energy crisis is just the beginning of the nightmare heading for the middle class. The restriction of rare earth minerals from the Arctic will trigger a catastrophic supply chain collapse in the technology sector. Without guaranteed access to elements like dysprosium, the production of microchips, high-capacity batteries, and medical imaging equipment will grind to a halt. The cost of a new smartphone, a basic laptop, or an electric vehicle will mathematically double overnight. Tech giants will be forced to pay massive premiums to Chinese processors just to keep the lights on. Furthermore, the rerouting of global shipping lanes means everyday consumer goods will take significantly longer to arrive. Because the Northwest Passage is now a heavily tolled, restricted waterway, shipping companies must divert back to the Panama Canal. This adds thousands of nautical miles and millions of dollars in bunker fuel costs to every single cargo ship. Retailers are absolutely not going to absorb those increased maritime transit fees. They are going to pass every single cent of that operational cost directly onto you, the consumer. We are staring down the barrel of massive hyperinflationary pressure on basic necessities. Everything from fresh food and winter clothing to household supplies and construction materials will surge in price. The era of cheap, reliable, next-day delivery goods is officially over. Insurance premiums for maritime shipping in the Northern Hemisphere are already spiking by over 400%. Your purchasing power is being systematically destroyed by a geopolitical blockade that you had no vote in. This is exactly how high-level global strategy directly drains your personal bank account. You are paying the ultimate price for Washington's strategic failures. So what exactly happens next as this crisis accelerates? The next 30 days are going to be some of the most volatile and dangerous in modern economic history. Within the next 72 hours, expect to see the Pentagon announce emergency naval exercises near the Alaskan border. This will be a desperate, transparent attempt to project strength to the American public. However, it will only serve to escalate military tensions with Ottawa and trigger automated Russian radar deployments across the Bering Strait. By the end of week 1, the United Nations Security Council will convene a highly publicized emergency session. Because of the veto powers held by Russia and China, who inherently benefit from America's exclusion, this session will inevitably end in gridlock. Global financial markets will react violently to the unprecedented uncertainty. Watch the resource and energy sectors closely. Companies heavily invested in U.S.-led Arctic drilling infrastructure will see their stock prices absolutely decimated. Conversely, Canadian mining firms and international shipping conglomerates that agree to play ball with Ottawa's new tariffs will experience explosive growth. By day 15, we will see the first major supply chain disruptions hitting major big-box retailers. This will lead to localized, highly publicized shortages of high-tech goods and specialized automotive parts. The true, horrifying gravity of the situation will finally set in for the American consumer. The United States government will be forced to swallow its pride and quietly begin back-channel negotiations with Canada. Washington will essentially be capitulating to Ottawa's terms just to keep the economy functioning. They will have to agree to pay exorbitant environmental tariffs and transit fees. They will be forced to buy access to the very waters they once considered completely free and open. This ultimate humiliation will mark the official, undeniable end of American unipolar dominance in the Western Hemisphere. The map of global power is being redrawn, and America is no longer holding the pen. The true cost of Canada blocking U.S. access to the Arctic is not just $4 trillion in lost natural resources. The true cost is the permanent fracturing of North American security architecture. It is the rapid, unstoppable acceleration of a new, highly contested multipolar world order. America has definitively lost its grip on the steering wheel of global maritime commerce. We are entering a brutal new era where absolute control of raw materials and frozen transit routes dictates the very survival of nations. Your financial security and your standard of living are now entirely at the mercy of foreign monopolies and restricted choke points. Will the United States accept this catastrophic defeat, or are we witnessing the terrifying prelude to a new kind of resource war? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think the American military will physically retaliate, or is the era of unquestioned U.S. dominance truly over forever? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and turn on all notifications, because the truth they are hiding is only going to get darker from here, and you cannot afford to look away.